Building wealth is a lot like growing a garden. It starts with planting seeds like ideas, habits, and investments that you nurture over time. Not every seed takes root though. Some seeds sprout, some never break the surface, and some massively take off. These are the ones that build your garden. Not every seed that you plant will bloom, but the ones that do change everything. These are what end up being your shortcuts to wealth. And after going to Stanford, I have seen firsthand that many who have built wealth at a young age have written a shortcut that they rarely talk about, and that is the shortcut of being born into wealth already. Now, obviously, this shortcut isn't available to the rest of us, which is why in this video, I wanted to share the shortcuts that have made the biggest impact on my finances and what I learned from them. For every one of these, keep in mind that there are at least a dozen others that didn't work out, so it's not all sunshine all the time, but we all know that the lucky breaks do matter. So timestamps are below if you'd like to jump around, but without further ado, let's get into it. My first shortcut to wealth is that I learned it's okay to care about money at a young age. Many of us were brought up to see money as taboo, something that we're not supposed to discuss or ask about. And while my parents were never experts, they openly talked about their finances with me, their challenges, what they wish they'd done differently, and their hope that I could avoid the money mistakes that they'd made. I was able to watch them eventually build a middle-class life from the ground up while also doing their best to help out our extended family with their money challenges too whenever they could. And getting this front row view into moments where money had control over life instead of the other way around taught me really early on that money is something that I needed to be aware of. And for anything that we want to eventually be good at, awareness is always the very first step. This awareness is the small seed that led me to reach for the book on finance instead of Harry Potter for the 8th time, to feel confident with a movie at home instead of going out for drinks with friends, and most importantly, to not feel ashamed for caring about money and wanting to learn about it in the first place. My second shortcut is that my education has been very, very cheap. When people think of Stanford, Harvard, Yale, their minds usually jump straight to thinking about fancy jobs, higher salaries, or better networking opportunities, but these aren't the biggest advantage. The real shortcut of going to a school like these is that you can graduate without any debt. These schools have massive financial aid programs that provide help to the students who need it, so you only pay what you can afford. This meant that I was able to get a $250,000 education nearly for free, given my family's finances. These days, most formal education is so massively overpriced compared to what we get out of it. College costs have increased by 169% over the past 4 decades, while earnings for young people in that same amount of time has increased by just 19%. Going into massive debt for formal education just isn't worth it. There are so many other free or low-cost resources and experiences that teach you much more relevant skills rather than just theory. YouTube, books, podcasts, skill-based communities, and apprenticeships are just some of the options that are out there. And these are all things that I'm taking advantage of too. For example, instead of going back to school to get an MBA and having to take on that debt, I've decided that I'd rather put that time and effort towards new projects where I'll be able to learn far more by doing and at a far lower cost. Being a lifelong learner is the surest way to increase your skills and earning potential. And these days, there are so many great alternatives available to an expensive traditional degree. Experiencing ownership early in my career was my third shortcut to wealth. My first job out of college was at a startup where I made $75,000 a year in cash, plus a little bit of equity that I didn't understand at the time. And I had friends that I knew were making much more than that, but the job covered my living expenses. I was learning a lot and having fun, and so I really didn't think much of it at the time. Fast forward 4 years later, the company went public and my equity shot up by $100,000, skyrocketing my net worth. And that is when I first learned that ownership is where fast money is made. It had taken me 4 years of aggressively budgeting my salary to save up that same amount that I had made through equity nearly overnight. When it comes to building wealth, ownership in assets makes a much bigger impact than our salary can. Stocks that compound over time, real estate that brings in steady income, or businesses that grow in value. Putting your money towards these things means that they can start to do the heavy lifting for you rather than just relying on your time. My last shortcut is that I found places that put my financial goals on easy mode. When I first graduated, I lived in the center of a main street across from Whole Foods with a coffee shop downstairs and probably at least a dozen restaurants open until midnight. A month into living there, I checked my bank account and I realized I hadn't managed to save a single penny. I'd spent all my money on takeout, coffee each day, and dinner out with friends without even realizing it. I decided, unrelated to all of this, to move closer to work, which happened to be in a quieter town. And after a few weeks in that new spot, my savings rate shot up to over 50%. By moving to a place with fewer distractions and temptations on how to spend my money, Saving became a whole lot easier without even having to work at it. Our environments give us nudges that influence how we spend our time, money, and attention. As humans, we rely on habits and convenience much more than our willpower. Our environments can make habits almost effortless, but that includes the ones that we want and the ones that we don't. And there are lots of ways that we can apply this to our lives. For example, when I wanted to start working out more this year, I started to keep my gym bag packed and ready to go by the front door every day where I knew that I would see it. Let's say you're someone that wants to read more, you might try keeping a book on your nightstand instead of your phone. Making our environment one that nudges us in the direction we want to move puts our goals on easy mode, especially when it comes to the goals that we have around money. And this is true for our physical environment as well as the environments that we create through our friend groups, the content we consume, and the thoughts that we encourage. These are 4 shortcuts I took and what I learned from them that have made the biggest difference in both my finances and quality of life. I hope that you enjoyed this, and as always, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.